Earlier this week, I had a chance to talk to freedom fighter Bruce Montague. He's the Canadian gunsmith that was jailed and got his firearms taken away for letting his license expire in an act of civil disobedience to protest what he deemed as unconstitutional legislation when Bill C-68 was introduced. He also almost had his house taken away by the government as a result of protesting and has been through the court system for 15 years. Bruce knows a ton about gun laws and rights, but he's also experienced firsthand how our freedom is eroding for Canadian citizens. So I figured who better to talk to about freedom and government infringements than him. We chatted about a lot of different issues, the first being the mainstream media, its messaging, and who controls it. Here.
The media, well, rebel media knows this very well, the media is so controlled by our government. That they pick and choose what goes out in the media that people get to hear. And it does have an effect on people's minds, but I'd like to think that eventually people get wise to that. I'm hearing more and more of the regular average Joe person that really mistrusts the media now, and they really mistrust the government.
Bruce actually had a media ban on his case, and the excuse was that it was for his protection. He actually believes it was because if the majority of people heard about his case, that they would show support for him, which led him to tell me about some advice that one of his lawyers gave him.
My lawyer, who spent a lot of time protecting or representing activists and protesters like myself, he died. That's why the CCF took over.
Yeah.
And he pointed out to me, he says, you're likely going to lose. And it says, and most of my clients do, but it's important to have people like you go up in court, publicly, loudly proclaim what the rights and freedoms are, what your issues are, because there are a lot of people out there listening. They're afraid to speak up, but there's a lot of people listening. And eventually, when you get enough martyrs, if I can use the word, enough martyrs speaking up and saying something, the overall thought of the general populace will change. It'll reach a critical mass at some point, and there will be change.
Of course, I also talked to Montague about gun laws today, and here's what he had to say.
All these gun laws have never had anything to do with gun crime or safety, ever. They're politically motivated laws designed specifically to disarm Canadians. Unfortunately, most people don't read the law closely enough or carefully enough to really figure that out. Like the Firearms Act, when it came out in '94, it's 1,400 pages of legalese. I don't know if you've ever written or read legalese, but there's a lot of circular arguments going on in there, and a lot of run-on sentences with double, triple, quadruple negatives in them, and it's really difficult to figure out. But once you read it, you start to realize that this has nothing to do with safety and crime prevention. It has to do totally with disarmament of the country. And I can't help but ask myself, why is the government trying to disarm the good people of this country? I mean, people can draw their own conclusions, I guess, but the only conclusion I can come up with is it's a mistrust issue. Trust is a two-way street. The government doesn't seem to trust us with our guns. Now all of a sudden I got my back up, says, why don't they trust me? Now I don't trust them. Governments for the beginning of ages around the world have been doing this, is they suppress the people around them, they restrict or completely outlaw the carrying of arms, or even the possession or ownership of firearms. Not even at target shooting, you're allowed to use them in many countries. So I think it's just the nature of governments, and it's a corrupt nature, where they try to suppress the rights of everybody in the country to have a right to their own life and to defend their life. And that's really what it boils down to. And a lot of people don't like to discuss that because it's uncomfortable to think about using a firearm for the defense of your own life. But let's face it, that's what they were designed for.
Overall, Bruce also said that he thinks it's a control issue for the government to enforce tight gun laws and that it's a suppression in the name of safety. We also talked a bit about world issues that aren't really issues, like who uses what bathroom, and things that are really non-issues used as a distraction from real issues that people should be worried about.
Everybody's happy. They've got their satellite TV, they got their beer, they got their sports, they got a good job, a roof over their head. Life is good. It really is. Even for me, even the persecution I've gone through here, life is still really good for me. I feel very privileged to be living where I am. But that doesn't change the fact that we're heading in the wrong direction. But most people aren't going to stand up and say anything because it'll make their life uncomfortable. And they won't say anything until it gets to a point that they're so uncomfortable anyway that they got nothing to lose, and then they'll fight. But by then it's kind of too late.
One thing that Bruce and I agreed on was that society continues to make the same mistakes. We continue to elect regressive governments in that don't have our best interests in mind. We take what little freedom we have for granted because we're just so caught up in the daily grind and day-to-day life. And we continue to repeat the same mistakes that we've already learned lessons from time and time again. You know, I expected Bruce Montague to be much more pessimistic after such a long struggle with the government and the law, but he's actually grateful for what he has, despite what he's had to face in life. And all in all, he's a realist. For the Rebel.media, I'm Holly Nicholas.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.